If you've ever sent a 5-paragraph email explaining why you can't do something you don't actually need permission for, this episode is for you. Some of the things you think are polite are actually costing you money, respect, and peace, and nobody told you that. Welcome back to Exhibit A-List, where pop culture gets cross-examined. I'm your host, Jasmine Webb. I'm a lawyer, and today's episode is a little bit different. I've been thinking about all the things I notice as a lawyer, as a friend, as someone who just observes people navigating life and business. And there are some things I would tell you if I was your lawyer bestie and I wasn't afraid of hurting your feelings or coming across too intense at brunch. But here's the thing, I care. And sometimes caring about someone means being honest with them, even when it's uncomfortable. So today, I'm giving you the advice I'd give you if we were best friends, sitting on my couch, and I had permission to be completely real with you. This isn't all legal advice. It's really life advice from someone who happens to be a lawyer. It's the stuff I notice that makes me go, honey, no. But I don't always say it out loud until now. So a quick reminder before we jump in, you can always find me on Instagram, Jasmine Weg, ESQ. Follow the podcast account too at Exhibit A-List Pod and TikTok at Jazz the Lawyer. Buckle up because we're getting into it. Okay, first things first. You over-explain yourself. You're giving way too much context for things that don't require it. You call out sick from work and you write a lengthy email describing your kid's poop situation and your dog's cough and the fact that you barely slept and you think you're getting a migraine. Just stop. And I want to tell you that I am guilty of doing this when I was younger, and I really needed a wake-up call that it's not necessary and it can hurt you. I'm not feeling well and I won't be in today is a complete sentence. If there's follow-up needed, they will ask and then you answer. But here's what happens when you over-explain. People start to expect a full explanation every time. From a lawyer's perspective, the more you say, the more there is to question. And then when you're not comfortable sharing or when it's something private, you will feel like you owe them the same level of detail. Or worse, they will feel comfortable asking you follow-up questions when they see you. And now you're stuck re-explaining your intestinal situation or whatever it was in the break room. You don't owe anyone your medical history or your personal business to justify taking a sick day or saying no to plans or declining an invitation. The less you explain, the less you're expected to explain. Trust me on this. Number 2, you're ignoring problems that you know are going to bite you later. Last week, I was at a cafe and I heard this waiter say to a patron, "Hey, tell your kid to be careful on that chair. It's known to fall backwards." I'm sorry, what? If you know that your chairs are known to fall over and you're aware that they pose a danger, the solution is not to go give a warning whenever you see someone and you're lucky enough to catch them before they get hurt. That solution is not good. The solution is to get better chairs so you don't have the problem. And I get it. A lot of problems are expensive to fix and a headache to think about, but they're usually more expensive to leave alone. The broken front step that you've been meaning to fix, the weird electrical outlet that sparks sometimes, the leak that you're keeping an eye on. And that applies to non-physical things too. The employee who's underperforming for months and you're giving them one more chance, a boundary you haven't set with a client who texts you at all hours. That one's hitting me personally. The friend who always forgets their wallet. You know these are problems. Ignoring them doesn't make them go away. It just makes your new normal until you explode or the situation explodes. Number 3, sometimes it's better to drop the excuses when we all see through them anyway. Don't tell me, "Hey, I didn't see your text." At this point, we all have phones glued to our hands. Not only did you see the text, but I saw you were active on WhatsApp at the time I sent it. I also saw you were active on Instagram, and then you uploaded and updated a story. So you saw the text. You just weren't ready to respond yet, or you didn't have an answer, or you just didn't want to deal with it right then. And you know what? That's fine. That's human. That's very valid. I feel like that all the time. That's why I'm constantly marking emails that I read as unread so I can get to them later. But the flimsy excuse is what makes it weird. So an honest response would be much better. "Thank you for your patience. I saw this, but I needed time to think about it." Or, "Hey, just getting back to you now." We all know how phones work. We also know that not everyone needs to be available to you 24/7 just because they're reachable. Just because you're on your phone doesn't mean you have to answer. It's the lies that are annoying. So the lie is more insulting than just being straightforward. Honesty ages better than excuses, always. Number 4, and this one is big. You're apologizing when you should just be stating facts. Sorry, but I'm unavailable that day. Sorry, I can't take on that project. Sorry, I need to leave by 5. Why are you apologizing for having boundaries, for having a schedule, for being a human with limitations? Just say I'm not available that day. That doesn't work for me. Or I need to leave by 5. You're not doing anything wrong by having limits, therefore the apology is unnecessary. This is especially important in professional settings. When you apologize for things that don't warrant an apology, you're undermining yourself. You're training people to see your boundaries as inconveniences rather than just facts of life. State your boundaries like facts because that's what they are. Okay, number 5, you let people get away with being vague because you don't want to seem difficult. So someone says, let's get together soon, or I'll send that over, or we'll figure out payment later, and you just let it hang in the air. You nod and smile and say, sounds good. And then you're surprised when nothing happens or when there's confusion later. Pin people down. Great. Are you free Tuesday at 3? When can I expect that? Let's nail down the payment terms before we start. Vagueness protects them, not you. Vague agreements are exactly how resentment, confusion, and of course, legal disputes start. When things are unclear, you're the one left holding the bag, wondering when something's going to happen, or wondering, or worse, you're doing work without knowing if or when you'll be paid. Being specific isn't being difficult. It's being professional and respectful of everyone's time. The people who get annoyed when you ask for clarity are usually the people who benefit from keeping things vague. Number 6, you're taking on other people's urgency as your own emergency. Just because someone texts you ASAP or marks an email urgent doesn't mean you need to drop everything and respond immediately. Their poor planning is not your crisis. Urgency without consequences isn't urgency, it's just pressure. Unless it's actually your emergency too, like your own deadline or your own client or your own crisis, you can respond on your own timeline. I see this all the time with people who are scared of seeming unresponsive or unhelpful, that they let people's lack of planning completely derail their day. And then they're stressed or behind on their own stuff because they were busy putting out someone else's fire that honestly could have waited. You're allowed to triage. You're allowed to assess whether something actually requires immediate attention or if urgent just means I want this now. Respond when you can appropriately respond, not when someone else decides that you should. Number 7, you think being indirect is being polite, but really you're just being unclear. I was hoping maybe we could possibly consider moving this to Thursday if that's okay with everyone and you're not too busy. Just say, can we move this to Thursday? Direct isn't rude. It's respectful of everyone's time. When you're indirect, people have to decode what you're actually asking for. When you're trying to hint your way to something you want, it's very confusing and very frustrating. Half the time, they're not even sure if you're making a request or just musing out loud. This happens a lot with women, especially. We're socialized to soften everything we say, to make ourselves smaller, to couch every request in a million qualifiers. But in professional settings, especially, clarity is kindness. So say what you mean, ask for what you want, and it'll just make everyone's life easier. Number 8, and I'm just going to say it, you are asking for advice about the same situation over and over, and you're not taking the advice. You've asked 5 different people what to do about your terrible roommate, your dead-end situationship, your toxic job. Everyone has given you the same advice, and you nod, you say, you're so right, and then you do nothing. And then 2 weeks later, you're asking again. And here's the thing, maybe you don't actually need more advice. Maybe you're looking for validation because you don't feel confident making decisions on your own. And I get that. I really do. But at some point, asking for advice you're not going to take becomes a way to avoid taking action. Ask yourself, am I actually asking for advice or am I asking for permission to avoid acting? If you know what you need to do and you're scared to do it, that's different. That's something that you need to work through. But collecting opinions isn't the same as making a decision. At some point, you have to trust yourself enough to move forward. Okay, number 9 is a little savage, but if you recognize someone, they probably recognize you too. I just have to say it. So pretending you don't know who they are to avoid saying hello is kind of babyish and definitely not working like you think it is. We've all done this. You see someone you vaguely know at Target and suddenly you're very interested in reading the ingredient list on a can of beans. But here's the reality. They saw you and they know you saw them. And now it's just awkward for everyone. A quick, hey, good to see you as you keep walking takes 2 seconds and is so much less weird than the elaborate performance of pretending you're invisible. So just say hi, be a person, and move on with your life. And finally, number 10, are you asking advice from the right people? Think about who you're going to for advice. Are these people who you actually admire for how they handle this exact same type of situations that you are asking about? Or are you just asking whoever will listen? If you're asking your perpetually single friend for relationship advice, or your friend who's always broke for financial guidance, or your friend who's never had a boundary in their life for advice on setting boundaries, what are we doing here? This isn't about judging your friends. It's about being strategic. Different people have different strengths. Go to the people who have actually successfully navigated what you're trying to navigate. And if you don't know anyone who's handled your situation well, that's information too. Maybe you need to expand your circle, join a different community, or find a mentor, because asking the wrong people for advice is just going to keep you stuck in the same patterns. Okay, we've been serious, but now let's talk about the things that technically don't matter, but absolutely live rent-free in your brain, or at least mine. Before we wrap up, we're doing a little petty court where I'm ruling on the minor disputes that don't matter in the grand scheme of things, but somehow still keep us up at night. Case number 1, the thank you text loop. Here's the situation. Someone sends you a gift or does you a favor. You send a thank you text. They respond, of course, anytime. Do you have to respond to that? My ruling? No. Of course, anytime is a conversation ender. It's designed to close the loop. If you respond with thanks again or a heart emoji, you're just creating an infinite thank you spiral. The thank you has been acknowledged. You're free to go. Case dismissed. Case number 2, the unfollow back situation. You unfollow someone on Instagram because you're cleaning up your feed or you're not close anymore. They notice, they immediately unfollow you back. Are they being petty or is this fair game? My ruling, fair game. Look, you made your first move. They're just matching your energy. You can't be mad that someone noticed and responded in kind. If you didn't want them to know, you shouldn't have done it. Also, if you're close enough that this matters, maybe you shouldn't have unfollowed them in the first place. Both parties are being a little petty here, but the person who unfollowed first has no grounds to complain. Case dismissed. Case 3, the sorry just seeing this 3 hours later situation. Someone responds to your text 3 hours later with sorry just seeing this, but you can see they were active on social media the whole time. Are they lying, or is this an acceptable social courtesy? My ruling is they're lying and we all know it, as we spoke about before. But here's the thing. Sometimes the lie is the polite thing. What they're really saying is, I saw this, but I wasn't in the headspace to respond thoughtfully, and now I am. That's fine, but just say that in the future. Or better yet, just respond without the lie. Just getting back to you. Works perfectly without the performance. The lying is what makes it weird. Guilty of unnecessary lying, but the sentiment is understandable. Reduce sentence. Just be more honest next time. Case closed. Okay, so that's it. Those are the 10 things I'd tell you if I was your lawyer bestie and was not afraid to hurt your feelings. And look, if any of those things hit a little too close to home, I'm saying them with love. We all do some of these things sometimes. I've definitely done several of them, and that's why they came up. But awareness is the first step to doing better, right? If this episode changed how you think about these things, or if it made you go, oh God, she's talking about me, please share it with a friend who loves this kind of stuff. You know, the friend is always asking for advice or who needs to hear some of these things too. Tell me which one of these hit the hardest. And if you haven't already, take a second to follow the podcast, leave a rating or a review wherever you're listening or watching. It genuinely helps other people find the show, and I read every single review. You can find me on Instagram, JasmineWegESQ, the podcast at Exhibit A List Pod, on TikTok, Jazz the Lawyer. If you want to tell me which one of these resonated most, or if you have your own, Things I wish I could tell people without hurting their feelings to add to the list, let me know. I love hearing from you guys. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time on Exhibit A List.